I was standing outside a $2.3 million mansion that my own money had bought, pressing the doorbell over and over while my son pretended I didn't exist. The brass doorbell echoed through what should have been my family's dream home, but instead felt like a fortress built to keep me out. I could see Michael through the tall windows, my 45-year-old son who used to run into my arms after school, now deliberately walking past the front door like I was some unwanted solicitor. My arthritis made my fingers ache as I pressed that doorbell again and again, the chime playing the same cheerful melody that mocked everything I thought I knew about motherhood. The irony wasn't lost on me. Every brick of this imposing colonial mansion, every perfectly manicured shrub in the front yard, every gleaming window that reflected my desperate face back at me, had been paid for with money I had scraped together over 30 years of living on crackers and canned soup. While Michael was inside, probably enjoying his gourmet kitchen with granite countertops, I was standing on his doorstep, wearing a floral dress from Walmart that I'd owned for 5 years. Through the window, I caught a glimpse of Jessica, my daughter-in-law, gliding past in what looked like a designer outfit that probably cost more than my monthly Social Security check. She saw me too. Our eyes met for just a moment before she deliberately turned away, her perfectly styled blonde hair swishing as she disappeared deeper into the house that my sacrifice had built. Hey, beautiful soul. Before we dive in, show some love with a like, tap subscribe, and tell me, where in this big, beautiful world are you watching from? The automatic sprinkler system chose that exact moment to turn on, sending a spray of cold water across the front walkway and soaking my dress, my gray hair, my dignity. I stumbled backward, nearly losing my balance on the wet stone steps, while neighbors across the street began to notice the commotion. Mrs. Henderson from the house next door was walking her little dog and stopped to stare. I could see the pity in her eyes, the way she was probably wondering what this elderly woman was doing, making such a scene at the beautiful Williams house. That's when it hit me with crushing clarity. I wasn't standing at my son's house. I was standing at a stranger's house, built with my life's work, occupied by people who wore my son's and daughter-in-law's faces, but had hearts I no longer recognized. The doorbell fell silent under my trembling finger as I realized that the family I had sacrificed everything to build had locked me out in the cold, leaving me with nothing but wet clothes and the bitter taste of betrayal. This was the moment I understood that love, when it becomes one-sided, can bankrupt you in ways that go far beyond money. I wasn't always the desperate woman standing in the rain outside that mansion. For most of my life, I was Charlotte Williams, the elementary school principal who could calm a crying child with one gentle word and make even the toughest parent listen during conferences. I was the woman who raised a son by herself after my husband Tom died in a construction accident when Michael was just 12 years old, his lunch money still crumpled in his pocket from that terrible Tuesday morning when everything changed. Tom had been the love of my life, the man who used to bring me wildflowers from construction sites and kiss my forehead every morning before work. When that crane collapsed and took him from us, I made a promise, standing beside his grave, that Michael would never feel the absence of his father in his opportunities. I would be both parents, both providers, both cheerleaders for his dreams. So I worked. God, how I worked. 50 hours a week as principal at Riverside Elementary. Then evenings tutoring kids whose parents could afford to pay me $20 an hour for what I gave away free during school hours. Weekends were spent grading papers, planning lessons, and later, when Michael got older, working as a substitute teacher at the high school for extra money. I lived in the same modest 2-bedroom house Tom and I had bought as newlyweds, drove the same 1998 Honda Civic until the paint started peeling, and never took a vacation that wasn't a day trip to the state park. Every extra penny went toward Michael's future. Private school tuition at St. Augustine Academy, Because the guidance counselor said it would look better on college applications. Northwestern University for his undergraduate degree, because that's where he wanted to go, even though the out-of-state tuition made my stomach clench every semester. Then an MBA from the same school, because Michael said it was essential for his business dreams. I ate generic cereal and store-brand everything, so he could eat in the dining halls with his friends. I wore the same winter coat for 8 years, so he could join the business fraternity that required expensive social events. But I was proud. Michael was everything I had hoped he would become. Smart, ambitious, well-spoken, the kind of man who commanded respect in a room. When he started dating Jessica, a striking blonde from a wealthy family in the suburbs, I was thrilled that he had found someone who matched his refined tastes. When they married, I wore a dress from JCPenney to their country club wedding and smiled until my cheeks hurt, knowing that Tom would have been so proud to see our boy in his tuxedo. The Sunday dinners at my little house became sacred. Michael would bring Jessica and eventually their daughter Lily, and we would crowd around my kitchen table that barely fit 4 people. Michael would tell me about his business plans, his dreams of starting his own consulting firm, his vision of financial independence. He called me his best investment advisor and the smartest woman he knew, and my heart would swell with the kind of pride that made all those years of sacrifice feel like the best investment I had ever made. I trusted him completely, absolutely, the way you trust gravity to keep your feet on the ground. The Riverside Country Club's private dining room was buzzing with conversation and clinking glasses when Michael stood up, tapping his champagne flute with a silver knife to get everyone's attention. It was Lily's 16th birthday party, and the room was filled with relatives, family friends, and Jessica's social circle from the country club. I was sitting at the head table in my best dress, a navy blue outfit I had bought on sale at Macy's specifically for this occasion, feeling grateful that Michael had chosen such an elegant venue to celebrate my granddaughter's milestone. I want to thank everyone for being here tonight to celebrate my beautiful daughter, Michael began, his voice carrying that confident tone that had made me so proud during his college graduation speech. But I also want to share some exciting news about our family's future. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out his phone, his face glowing with excitement. The room fell quiet as he swiped through what appeared to be photos. Jessica and I have just purchased our dream home, he announced, turning the phone screen toward the crowd. A beautiful colonial in Westfield Estates. Gasps and murmurs of approval rippled through the room. I squinted at the tiny screen from my seat, trying to make out the details of what looked like an enormous house with white columns and perfectly manicured grounds. My heart swelled with pride for my son's success, even as a small voice in the back of my mind wondered how he had managed such a purchase. The house has 6 bedrooms, 4 bathrooms, a gourmet kitchen with a granite island, a home theater in the basement, and a wine cellar, Michael continued, his voice growing more animated with each detail. There's even a 3-car garage and an in-ground pool with a hot tub. The room erupted in congratulations and applause. I found myself clapping along, genuinely happy for Michael and Jessica, though a knot of concern was forming in my stomach. This sounded like a multi-million-dollar property, far beyond what I had imagined his consulting business could afford. Michael, honey, I called out during a lull in the conversation, my voice slightly shaky. This sounds absolutely wonderful. But how did you manage to afford such a beautiful home? The room went quiet again. But this time, the silence felt different, charged with an uncomfortable tension. Michael's expression shifted, his warm smile becoming something colder, more calculated. He looked directly at me, his eyes holding a hardness I had never seen before. Well, Mother, he said, emphasizing the formal title instead of his usual, Mom, I was able to make this purchase thanks to the generous gift you gave me last year, $850,000 goes a long way toward a down payment and renovations. The word gift hit me like a physical blow. I felt the blood drain from my face as every conversation, every document, every sleepless night I had spent worrying about my dwindling savings came rushing back. Gift? I managed to whisper, my voice barely audible. Michael, that was a loan. We signed papers. You were going to pay me back. Jessica leaned forward, her perfectly glossed lips curving into what might have been a smile on anyone else, but looked like a smirk on her face. Oh, Charlotte, she said, her voice dripping with condescension. Surely you don't expect Michael to pay back money you gave him out of love. Besides, his business success speaks for itself. We're finally able to live the lifestyle we deserve. The room had gone completely silent now. I could feel 30 pairs of eyes on me, some confused, some embarrassed, some pitying. My own family members, my sister Ruth, my nephew David, all staring at me like I had committed some social faux pas by bringing up money at a birthday party. I don't understand, I said, my voice growing stronger, despite my shaking hands. Michael, you promised me you would start making payments after the first year. That money was my entire life savings. It was my retirement fund. Michael's face flushed with what looked like genuine anger. Mother, you're embarrassing yourself, he said sharply, and you're embarrassing me in front of our friends. This is Lily's birthday party, not the time or place for this discussion. But I couldn't stop. 30 years of careful saving, of eating generic food and wearing secondhand clothes, of sacrificing every small pleasure so that this moment wouldn't happen to me. That money was supposed to be a business loan, Michael. I have barely $3,000 left in my savings account. I can't even afford to pay for my medications next month. Jessica reached over and placed her hand on Michael's arm, a gesture that looked supportive, but felt like a signal. Michael has worked so hard for his success, she said, her voice carrying to every corner of the now silent room. I think we should all be proud of what he's accomplished, instead of trying to diminish it. The message was clear. I was the problem. I was the ungrateful mother, trying to rain on her successful son's parade. The bitter old woman who couldn't accept that her child had moved beyond her modest world. As I looked around the room at faces that had turned from warm to uncomfortable to judgmental, I realized that Michael hadn't just taken my money. He had stolen my dignity, my security, and my trust, and he had done it in front of everyone who mattered to me, making me look like a fool who didn't understand the difference between generosity and exploitation. The drive home from the country club felt like the longest 23 minutes of my life. My hands gripped the steering wheel of my ancient Honda Civic so tightly that my knuckles had turned white, and I could barely see the road through the tears that kept threatening to spill over. The silence in the car was deafening after the humiliation I had just endured, broken only by the rattling of my old engine and the whisper of luxury cars passing me on the highway, their headlights blurring into streaks of light through my watery vision. Every red light felt like a moment of reckoning. At the intersection of Maple and 3rd, I sat staring at the traffic light while a sleek BMW pulled up beside me, its interior glowing with the soft light of a navigation system that probably cost more than I spent on groceries in 6 months. Inside, I could see a woman about my age, well-dressed, talking on a hands-free phone, probably making dinner plans or coordinating with friends. She looked comfortable, secure. The way I used to feel before tonight shattered everything I thought I knew about my place in the world. When I finally pulled into my narrow driveway, the small 2-bedroom house that had been my sanctuary for 30 years looked different somehow, smaller, shabbier. The paint was peeling around the front door frame, something I had been meaning to fix, but kept putting off because paint cost money. And money had always been for Michael's future, not for my comfort. Now, as I fumbled with my keys in the porch light that flickered because I had been putting off replacing the bulb, I realized that Michael's future had arrived, and I wasn't invited to be part of it. The house felt hollow as I stepped inside, filled with the ghosts of all the dreams I had built around my kitchen table. I walked straight to that table, the same one where Michael had done his homework while I graded papers beside him, where we had shared thousands of meals, where just 6 months ago he had sat across from me, with loan documents spread between us, promising to pay me back once his business got established. I pulled out every financial document I could find from the drawer where I kept important papers: bank statements, investment accounts, retirement planning sheets, and there it was in black and white. A checking account balance of $3,247.83. That was it. That was what remained of a lifetime of careful saving, of choosing store-brand cereal over name brand, of driving a car with a broken air conditioner through 3 summers because repairs weren't in the budget. The photographs, scattered across the table, told the story of a love that I had thought was reciprocal. Michael, at 5 years old, on his first day of kindergarten, his little hand in mine, looking up at me like I was his whole world. Michael, at his high school graduation, his arm around my shoulders, both of us beaming at the camera. Michael at his wedding, dancing with me to "The Way You Look Tonight," whispering in my ear that I was the most important woman in his life and always would be. That little boy who used to crawl into my bed during thunderstorms, who would bring me dandelions from the yard and call them beautiful flowers for my beautiful mommy, who promised me when he was 8 years old that when he grew up, he would buy me a big house and take care of me forever. Where had that child gone? When had he been replaced by this stranger who could look me in the eye and call a loan a gift, who could watch me panic about my financial security and tell me I was embarrassing him? I sat at that table until 4 in the morning, surrounded by the evidence of my foolishness in the photographs of my lost son. Outside, the world was quiet except for the occasional car passing by, probably carrying people home from happier celebrations, people whose children called to check on them, people whose sacrifices had been honored instead of exploited. The house creaked around me, settling into the night, and I realized that it was settling into my new reality too. At 72 years old, I was starting over with nothing but Social Security and the painful knowledge that the person I had loved most in the world had been willing to destroy me financially and emotionally for granite countertops and a wine cellar. The hardest part wasn't the money, though. The hardest part was accepting that the Michael I had raised, the Michael I had sacrificed everything for, the Michael I had trusted with my entire future, had never really existed at all. 3 days after the birthday party disaster, I was sitting in my living room, surrounded by boxes of paperwork that I hadn't touched in years, feeling overwhelmed by the magnitude of organizing my financial life when everything seemed hopeless. My sister Ruth had called that morning, her voice gentle but worried, suggesting that maybe I should start looking into what resources were available for seniors in financial distress. The conversation had left me feeling more defeated than empowered, but it also sparked something desperate in me, a need to understand exactly how dire my situation really was. That's when I remembered Tom's old roll-top desk in the spare bedroom, the one that had been his workspace when he was alive and had become a storage unit for important documents after he died. I had been avoiding that desk for months, maybe even years, because sorting through Tom's things always brought back the grief of losing him. But now, with my financial world crumbling around me, I needed to know exactly what I had and what I owed. The desk drawers were stuffed with folders that Tom had organized in his meticulous way, each one labeled in his careful handwriting. Insurance policies, tax returns, home mortgage, and then in the very back of the deepest drawer, a folder labeled Charlotte's Business Matters that I didn't even remember existing. Inside that folder was a document that made my hands shake as I read it. The original loan agreement between Michael and me, signed and notarized 18 months ago. Every word was crystal clear. Loan agreement was printed in bold letters across the top. The amount, $850,000, was spelled out in both numbers and words. The interest rate, 3% annually. The repayment terms, monthly payments of $2,500, beginning after a 12-month grace period that had ended 6 months ago. Michael's signature was right there next to mine, witnessed by Frank Morrison, our family lawyer, and notarized by his secretary. But that wasn't all. Underneath the loan documents was a manila envelope I had never seen before, sealed and marked in Tom's handwriting. Life insurance, final policy, Charlotte only. Inside was a letter from Mutual Trust, insurance dated just 3 months after Tom's death, informing me that I was the sole beneficiary of a $200,000 life insurance policy that Tom had taken out through his union. The letter explained that there had been complications processing the claim due to discrepancies in the accident report, but that the issues had been resolved and payment was available upon submission of proper documentation. My heart was pounding as I realized what this meant. In my grief and confusion after Tom's death, dealing with his employer's insurance, Social Security paperwork, and the mortgage company, I had completely overlooked this policy. The letter had gotten buried in the avalanche of paperwork that overwhelmed me during those dark months, and I had never followed up. There was more. At the bottom of the envelope was a deed to a small duplex on Elm Street that Tom and I had inherited from my sister Margaret when she died 5 years ago. In the chaos of Michael's college expenses and my own financial stress, I had forgotten that the property had never been properly transferred into just my name after Margaret's passing. According to the paperwork, I was now the sole owner of a rental property that the accompanying appraisal valued at $180,000. As I sat on the floor of that spare bedroom, surrounded by documents that represented nearly $400,000 in assets I didn't even know I had, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months. Hope. Not just hope, but power. Michael might have taken my savings and broken my heart, but he hadn't taken everything. Tom, even in death, had left me the tools I needed to fight back. The loan agreement alone was enough to prove that Michael had committed fraud by claiming my money was a gift. But the insurance money and the property meant I wasn't the destitute old woman he had made me feel like at that birthday party. For the first time since that terrible night at the country club, I smiled. The next morning, I called Frank Morrison's office at exactly 9 o'clock, when I knew he would be settling in with his first cup of coffee. Frank had been our family lawyer for over 20 years, handling Tom's estate, Michael's college loan paperwork, and countless other legal matters that required his steady guidance. His secretary, Mrs. Patterson, recognized my voice immediately and put me through without the usual screening questions. "Charlotte, how are you holding up?" Frank's voice was warm but concerned. At 68, he was only a few years younger than me, and his tone held the familiarity of old friendship mixed with professional interest. "Frank, I need to see you as soon as possible," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "It's about Michael and that loan agreement you helped us draft." There was a pause on the other end of the line. "Is everything all right? Has Michael been keeping up with the payments?" "That's what I need to discuss with you. When can I come in?" Frank cleared his schedule and agreed to see me that afternoon. I spent the morning organizing every document I had found, creating a timeline of events, and preparing for what I knew would be a difficult conversation. By the time I walked into Frank's oak-paneled office, I had transformed from the humiliated woman at the country club into someone with a purpose. Frank's expression grew darker as I recounted the events of Lily's birthday party. When I showed him the loan documents, his face flushed with genuine anger. "Charlotte, this is unconscionable," he said, adjusting his glasses as he studied Michael's signature. "Not only has he defaulted on the loan by failing to make payments, but claiming this was a gift constitutes fraud." This is a legally binding contract. But Frank, I said, my voice wavering slightly. He's my son. I don't want to destroy his life. Frank leaned back in his leather chair, his expression softening but remaining firm. Charlotte, he's already destroyed your financial security. The question is whether you're going to let him get away with it. He paused, studying my face. Tell me about your current financial situation. Honestly, I told him everything. The $3,247 remaining in my savings, the struggle to afford medications, the fear of losing my house. Frank listened without interruption, occasionally making notes on a legal pad. Here's what we're going to do, he said finally. First, we're going to file a formal demand for repayment of the loan, plus accumulated interest. According to the terms, he's already 6 months in default, which means we can demand immediate payment in full. Second, we're going to place a lien on that mansion, since the loan agreement specifically lists any real estate purchased with loan funds as collateral. Frank paused, his pen tapping against his desk. But Charlotte, we're also going to be strategic about this. I don't want Michael to know what's coming until we're ready to act. Can you pretend that everything is normal for a few more weeks? The idea of sitting through another Sunday dinner, smiling, while Jessica showed off jewelry bought with my money, made my stomach turn. But I nodded. What else do you need from me? Documentation. Every email, text message, voicemail, or conversation where Michael acknowledged this was a loan. Photos of his social media posts showing off expensive purchases. Witness statements from people who were at the birthday party. We need to build an ironclad case. Frank also advised me to immediately file claims for Tom's life insurance policy and begin the process of transferring the duplex deed into my name alone. These assets will give you financial security while we pursue the loan repayment, he explained. But more importantly, they'll show Michael that you're not the helpless victim he thinks you are. For the next 2 weeks, I became a different person. During the day, I played the role of the confused, defeated mother. I attended Sunday dinner and listened to Jessica describe their upcoming vacation to Europe. I smiled when Michael showed me pictures of his new home office furniture. I even complimented Jessica on her designer handbag, knowing that my sacrifice had paid for it. But at night, I was documenting everything. Screenshots of Michael's Facebook posts about his blessed life and financial success. Emails from 2 years ago where he wrote, "Don't worry, Mom. I'll pay you back with interest as soon as the business takes off." Text messages where he called me his favorite banker and promised that my investment would pay dividends. The hardest part was pretending to be weak when I was finally beginning to feel strong again. Tuesday morning arrived gray and drizzling, the kind of weather that matched my nervous energy as I sat at my kitchen table with a cup of coffee that had gone cold an hour ago. Frank had called the night before to confirm that everything was in place. The legal papers were prepared, the lien documents were filed and ready to be recorded, and most importantly, the insurance company had approved my claim for Tom's $200,000 policy. Today was the day Michael would learn that his mother wasn't the helpless victim he had taken me for. At exactly 9:30 a.m., Frank's process server, a no-nonsense woman named Linda, would arrive at Michael's office downtown to serve him with papers demanding immediate repayment of the $850,000 loan, plus 6 months of accumulated interest, totaling $876,500. At the same moment, another set of documents would be filed at the county courthouse, placing a legal lien on the Westfield Estates mansion, since our original loan agreement clearly stated that any real estate purchased with loan funds would serve as collateral. I had chosen Tuesday because I knew Michael's schedule by heart. He always arrived at his office by 9 a.m. for his weekly staff meeting, which meant he would be trapped in a conference room full of employees and clients when the papers were served. The same public humiliation he had subjected me to at Lily's birthday party. Except this time, the law was on my side. My phone rang at 10:15 a.m. Michael's name flashed on the caller ID, and I let it ring 4 times before answering. My voice, carefully, calm, and measured. "Hello, Michael. What the hell do you think you're doing?" His voice was a mixture of rage and panic that I had never heard before. "I just got served with some ridiculous lawsuit claiming I owe you money. This is insane, Mother. You can't sue your own son over a gift." I took a deep breath, feeling strangely peaceful for the first time in weeks. "It wasn't a gift, Michael. We both signed a loan agreement. Frank Morrison has the original documents with your signature and the notary seal. This is crazy. You're making yourself look like a fool. Everyone knows you gave me that money because you wanted to help me succeed. You said my money was an investment in your success," I replied, my voice growing stronger with each word. "Now I'm collecting my dividends. According to our agreement, you've been in default for 6 months. The full amount is due immediately, plus interest." There was a long pause on the other end of the line. When Michael spoke again, his voice had shifted from anger to something that sounded almost like pleading. "Mom, please, we can work this out. You don't understand what this could do to my business, to my reputation." "I understand perfectly," I said. "I also understand that I've filed a claim for your father's life insurance policy that I never collected, and I'm selling the duplex on Elm Street that I inherited from Aunt Margaret. I'm not the desperate old woman you humiliated at that birthday party, Michael." The silence on the other end was so long, I thought he might have hung up. When he finally spoke, his voice was cold and calculated. "If you don't drop this lawsuit immediately, I'll make sure you never see Lily again. I'll tell her that her grandmother is trying to destroy our family over money." That threat should have broken my heart, but instead, it crystallized everything I needed to know about who my son had become. "You already cut me off, Michael. You did that the moment you decided to steal from me and call it a gift. I'm just making it official. This isn't over," he said, his voice shaking with fury. "No," I agreed. "It's not. But, for the first time in months, I'm not afraid of how it ends." I hung up the phone and immediately blocked his number. Then I called Frank to let him know that Michael had received the papers and had reacted exactly as we had expected he would. The next move was Michael's, but for the first time since that terrible birthday party, I held all the cards. It felt like justice, served exactly as cold as the rain falling outside my window. The panic set in for Michael and Jessica within 48 hours of the lawsuit being served. Their first attempt at damage control came Thursday evening when Jessica called, her voice dripping with fake sweetness and what sounded like carefully rehearsed emotion. "Charlotte, I'm so sorry about the misunderstanding at Lily's party," she began, her tone suggesting she was reading from a script. "Michael and I have been talking, and we realize there might have been some confusion about the loan arrangement. We're willing to work out a payment plan." I almost laughed at the word confusion, as if accidentally calling a legal loan a gift in front of 30 people was some innocent mix-up. "Jessica, there's no confusion. Your husband committed fraud, and now he needs to pay the consequences." The fake sweetness evaporated instantly. "You're being completely unreasonable. Do you have any idea what this lawsuit could do to Michael's business? His clients are asking questions. We could lose everything. You should have thought about that before you spent my retirement money on granite countertops," I replied, hanging up before she could respond. By Saturday, they had escalated to emotional manipulation. Jessica called again, this time sobbing dramatically about being pregnant with their second child. "How can you do this to your own grandchild?" she wailed. "We need financial stability right now, not legal battles." I asked her how far along she was, and when she couldn't give me a coherent answer, I knew it was a lie. Frank later confirmed through his investigative contacts that Jessica had been seen at a wine tasting event the previous weekend, hardly the behavior of a pregnant woman. The final confrontation came on a rainy Sunday evening when Michael, Jessica, and Lily showed up at my front door unannounced. Michael's face was flushed with anger, his usually perfect hair disheveled, his expensive suit wrinkled like he had been wearing it for days. Jessica stood behind him, her arms crossed, while 16-year-old Lily looked confused and uncomfortable. "We need to talk," Michael demanded, pushing past me into my living room without invitation. "You need to leave," I replied firmly. "Any communication goes through my lawyer now." "Grandma, what's happening?" Lily asked, her young voice breaking through the tension. "Dad says you're trying to take our house away." Michael turned on me with a fury I had never seen before. "Look what you're doing to this family. I sacrificed my entire social life in college to take care of you. I gave up relationships, opportunities, everything to be the perfect son. I deserve that money. I earned it through years of being your emotional support system." The words hung in the air like poison. This was who my son really was. Someone who viewed love as a transaction, who believed that basic human decency toward his widowed mother entitled him to her life savings. "I raised a son who would take care of his mother," I said quietly, looking him directly in the eyes. "You turned into a stranger who steals from her and then blames her for objecting." Lily stepped forward, her teenage voice cutting through the adult drama with startling clarity. "Dad, did you really take Grandma's money without paying it back?" Michael's face crumbled as he realized his own daughter was seeing him clearly for the first time. "It's complicated, Lily. Adults make financial arrangements that children don't understand." "I understand perfectly," Lily said, her voice strong despite her tears. "You took advantage of someone who loved you." That was the moment Michael's mask finally slipped completely, revealing the entitled, manipulative man he had become. 6 months later, I was sitting on my small balcony in Mountain View Senior Living, watching the sunset behind the Blue Ridge Mountains while sipping tea from a delicate china cup that I had bought simply because I liked it, not because it was on sale. The 2-bedroom condo was everything I had never allowed myself to dream of. Bright, airy, with a kitchen that had granite countertops of my own choosing and windows that framed the mountains like living artwork. The legal settlement had been finalized in March. Michael was forced to sell the Westfield mansion and pay back $400,000 of the loan immediately, with the remaining $476,500 on a court-monitored payment plan that would take him 7 years to complete. Frank had structured it so that Michael couldn't declare bankruptcy to escape the debt, and every payment was automatically deducted from his business accounts to prevent any future confusion about his obligations. My insurance settlement in the sale of Aunt Margaret's duplex had given me financial security I had never experienced, even during my working years. For the first time in my adult life, I could afford to live comfortably without constantly calculating the cost of every purchase. I had joined the senior hiking group, something I never would have considered when I was worried about the expense of proper hiking boots and equipment. The community center had welcomed me as a volunteer literacy teacher, and every Tuesday and Thursday, I worked with adults who were learning to read for the first time. There was something profound about helping people discover the power of words when I was simultaneously discovering the power of my own voice. Maria, a 50-year-old grandmother who had never learned to read because she had worked in fields since childhood, reminded me that it's never too late to start over. The biggest surprise had been Robert Chen, a retired history teacher whose wife had died 3 years earlier, lived 2 buildings over, and had approached me one evening when I was struggling to carry groceries from my car. He was nothing like Tom, quieter, more intellectual, with a gentle sense of humor and an extensive collection of historical biographies. Our friendship had developed slowly over shared dinners and long conversations about books. And somewhere along the way, I realized I was falling in love again at 72 years old. Every other weekend, Lily visited. She had stood up to her parents with remarkable maturity, insisting that maintaining a relationship with me was her choice to make. During our visits, she would curl up on my couch and tell me about school, boys, her plans for college, and how proud she was of me for choosing yourself. "Grandma," she had said during her last visit, "you taught me that love shouldn't cost everything you have. Dad forgot that lesson, but I won't." This evening, as I watched the sky turn from gold to deep purple, I unfolded a handwritten letter that had arrived that morning. Lily's careful cursive filled 2 pages, but the sentence that made me smile was near the end. "I'm writing my college application essay about you, about how you showed me that it's never too late to stand up for yourself and start over. You're my hero, not because you sacrificed everything for your family, but because you finally decided you were worth fighting for too." I folded the letter carefully and placed it on the small table beside my chair, next to a framed photo of Tom and a new picture of Robert and me at the community center's autumn dance. The mountains were settling into darkness, and lights were beginning to twinkle in the valley below, each one representing someone's home, someone's story, someone's choices about how to love and be loved. For 30 years, I had defined myself by what I could give away. Now, finally, I was learning to define myself by what I chose to keep, protect, and honor in myself. Michael had tried to take my dignity, my security, and my future, but in the end, he had accidentally given me something far more valuable: the knowledge that I was strong enough to rebuild my life on my own terms. The evening air was getting cool, but I wasn't ready to go inside yet. This view, this peace, this sense of being exactly where I belonged, these were gifts I had given myself, and no one could ever take them away.